Hey everyone, Addie here from Influencer FastPass. I'm here with Brittany Ratelle. She is a business and intellectual property attorney who helps creators and online business owners get legally legit and set to scale. She has helped hundreds of founders protect and grow their brands and has worked with Bucket List Family, Hope Scope, Bloglotties, Sharon Says So, Glow, I love Glow, and so many more. Brittany helps with legal foundations, growth projects, and brand protection and licensing, and provides one-to-one legal services and DIY legal resources, which is how I found her. She is based in Coeur d'Alene, one of my favorite places in Idaho, and she has a hunky husband and 4 children. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining me. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I have a few questions. I want to go over contracts for influencers and influencers that are building businesses and how you can help them because I've been on your website. It looks amazing. It is so much help. I've talked to Brittany on numerous things and she's great. So, how did you decide to specialize in helping influencers and personal brands with legal matters?
Yeah, great question. I really fell into the work. So I graduated
Really?
law school more than a decade ago. And I was doing some other practice areas initially because I had my first baby as I was finishing law school. I wanted flexibility. So I meant I had to work for myself at home. So I was doing family law and estate planning. But I had these friends in kind of my circle who were kind of some of the first mommy bloggers, especially where I lived in Utah. It was the home of a lot of mommy bloggers.
Yes.
And they were starting to be the very first creators and turning those mommy blogs into businesses or turning Etsy shops into physical product and maker businesses. And I would get all the time, hey, Brittany, I know you don't do this, but they knew I was an attorney, but I just got this contract. I have no idea what it says. I'm about to sign it. Can you read it over? And I would be like, yes, please don't do that. Like, no, this isn't really what I do, but I'll help you out. And I kept doing that again and again. And then I get questions about, I probably need to set up an LLC. Yes, you should set up an LLC. You're making real money. You should probably do that. How do I pay my taxes? How do I? And it just snowballed from there until really it was like the birth of my last baby. I was really feeling the stirring, like it was time for me to change and shift and be more thoughtful and intentional and really just prayerful about what I was supposed to do. And it really came to me the answer that I'm supposed to help women achieve their dreams and that I should sit in this corner where I could help women, creatives, creators, online business owners do what they felt called to do. And that includes supporting them legally so that they could feel confident, that they could compete with the big boys, that they could, pitch their ideas and sell their offers. And they didn't have to go talk to like their dad's golf friend and get talked down to. And so, and be like, you do what? Like you have a
Yes.
food
Oh my
blog? That's a
gosh.
real business. I
Yeah, you
have.
gave me goosebumps. I love it.
So that's kind of my origin story, and I just absolutely love my job, and I love the corner of the world that I've been able to find in this online community, and I'm so grateful for social media and the internet and Zoom, allowing me that I can do this job from my home office, and be really flexible with my work-life balance. So
Yeah, I love that. And that's how I found you because I did call 5 other attorneys before I found Brittany. And I was like, you know what? I need to find someone on Instagram instead of like the old ways of, online. And because no one could help me, no one had the answer. Everyone was like not really familiar in the space. And I was like, let me just search on Instagram. And that's how I found you. So I love that. And I love that story. And it's definitely much needed in this space.
yeah, that's what I really found is that people were like not getting any service, like not even seeking it out because they didn't know what they didn't know, right? And
Yeah.
didn't understand that like, hey, you might not have to go and get like a business plan approved by a bank because a lot of these creative, especially creator businesses are really like bootstrapped, right? We don't need a
Yeah.
lot of capital in the
Yeah.
beginning, which is awesome. It means that we can grow slowly on our own terms and we don't really need someone else being like a gatekeeper. The
Yeah.
only downside is there aren't like these traditional milestones that like there's no one there being like, you are making this amount of money. You need to do this. Like you cannot go any further in your business
Yes.
until you get some contracts and you get your LLC set up and you get the stuff on your website. And
Yes.
so it means that you have to take the initiative and kind of put that CEO hat on. And I found that
Yeah.
on the legal side, there was really, no good information, right? That
Yeah. There's
especially
a
addressed
gap.
influencers and like what they needed to hear and of like, hey, as if you're an influencer business, these are the things that you need to be watching out for and looking out for.
Yes.
So
Yes. I want to get into that too. So can you share a little with us about the importance of like legal compliance for influencers and personal brands, like maybe some of the common challenges that the creators face in the digital space?
Yeah, absolutely. So the most common things that I see that creators are usually facing is around the use, like you would expect, is around like money and intellectual property.
Yes.
Especially because as a creator, this is how you make money. Your asset and your revenue stream is built around your IP, because every piece of content that you create, you own the rights to it if you've created it, and now you are deciding how this is going to be sold and licensed and rented to other
Mhm.
people. And so understanding how that scheme works and how copyright law works is a really important thing that I think a lot of people kind of get bad info, or they hear conflicting info online and it's not correct. So that's an area that I feel like a lot of people don't get served well in. And then just understanding kind of foundational legal basics. Like as soon as you make more than $600, the IRS says you're a business.
Mhm.
So they like, congratulations, you're not a hobby, you're a business. So whether you think you're a real business yet or not, the IRS thinks you're a business.
Yeah.
And if you were to have something happen, if someone were to get sued, and it's not like influencer businesses are like really high risk, like we're not out there leading like bachelorette rock climbing parties, right? But there are things that things can go south, right? Deals can go bad. Partnership deals could go bad, or a product collaboration. Someone could get, trip and fall at an event of yours. Someone can have a product that you recommended or that you're involved with and get hurt. Stuff can happen. And if you
Yeah.
haven't set up an LLC, there is no separation or no
Personally
asset protection.
liable.
Yeah, you are personally liable. So that means whatever's in your
Liable.
business bank account, whatever's in your spouse's bank account, whatever's in your house, in your car, all of that is just on the table and
Yeah.
available for a litigation judgment. So if that doesn't sound great to you,
No.
you want to put up a fence in between your business money and
Yeah.
your personal money. And you do that with a limited liability company, which is 99% of the time, an LLC is the best choice for an online business, like an influencer business. So, yeah.
There are a lot of questions about setting that up. I don't know if you want to get into it right now or recommend
Yeah.
a consult, but a lot of questions I get in my group are what's better, an S Corp or a C Corp? Is there
Yeah, great question. I could totally address that. So I don't want to make, I don't want to hide the ball, make people
okay.
wait no longer. I'm not going to tease or gatekeep. Right. That's what the young kids are saying.
Mhm.
So an S Corp is, funny enough, is actually not a legal entity. It's a tax election. And so once you become an LLC and normally are making around 50 to 60K, it normally is, you'll have some tax savings if you raise your hand and say, hey, IRS, I want to be taxed differently as an S corp, and that's actually just changes the way that you're taxed instead of being taxed as a sole proprietorship. And so you have to be an LLC first to be taxed as an S corp. And so if people say, hey, I'm an S corp, it means they're an LLC, which is great. And it's kind of a pure accounting question. So I always defer to what your CPA or your
Yeah.
tax advisor is saying, because they'll run the numbers and be like, it's not worth it yet. You're not making enough money. Or like, oh yeah, you had a great Q4, or you're going to have a great Q4 because you're booking on these deals. Let's go ahead and switch that now because you'll save some on the self-employment tax. And then a C corp is, it's another choice. And that's where people are used to seeing of like the real businesses, right? The real startups. And it could be a good choice if you are expecting outside investment pretty early in your company, or like want to go public. If you think that's in your wheelhouse of a company that you're starting, this is especially true for like a technology company or like a femtech or something else,
Yeah.
then I think a C corp can be a good choice for you. And again, also talk to an accountant. It's a joint accounting and legal question.
Yeah.
But if that's not what you're trying to do, then I still think an LLC is a better choice because there's less administrative burdens. There's less ways to like mess it up.
Yeah.
And it's usually a cheaper way for you to do your accounting and your tax return each year. Where if you go into the C Corp, and it can actually get messier. And like you're supposed to be doing board meetings and minutes. And I know a lot of people who set up legal Zoom C Corps and they're not doing that. And so technically they're not compliant. Yeah. So
Yeah. I've seen that, but I've seen that on the 1099s that all the influencers have to fill out,
right.
have to check it. So we always get that question in our group. I'm glad you answered it.
Yeah. And I mean, an LLC is like no shame. Like Google still has a part of its company structure that's an LLC. Like LLCs can be legit companies. It's not like you're choosing like a JV status. Like an LLC is a legit business. So yeah.
I love that. Speaking of the original work that we talked about and intellectual property, how do influencers protect themselves from the unauthorized use? Their brand name, their logo, their content, maybe even
Right.
their likeness, their images. how can they protect themselves? And is there
Totally. Yeah.
anything
Your first tool is probably to make sure that your name is available, especially if you're operating on not under like your legal name, right? Like if
a
I was going
blog
to be an
name?
influencer and say I wasn't, Brittany Ratelle, but I
Yeah,
had a blog name or a handle or kind of a personal brand name that was something different. You want to make sure that's available and that you
like
don't
Verbal
have
Gold.
any conflicts right off the bat. So I recommend a really thorough Google search, like go way past the first page and make sure if there's anything else that pops up on social media, or it's the name of someone's Etsy shop or the name of like a supplier on Facebook or on Amazon or something. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then you also want to check the trademark database. So that's step 2. And trademark searches, you can DIY, and I never want to like not turn someone away from like using this tool because it is available, but they're a little tricky because the trademark database is not an algorithmic database. It's like a Boolean operated like 90s database. And so
Yes.
it will only tell you what you ask it to do. So if you go and search for Starbucks with 2 S's, it will tell you 0 search results. Now that's a little misleading, right? Because I don't recommend that you start a coffee company with Starbucks with 2 S's at the end. So
Right.
because trademark law says, look, if it's confusing to a consumer, it's too close.
Right.
And so take the trademark search with a grain of salt. If you really love your name, if you'd be heartbroken if you got hit with a cease and desist and had to change it, or if you're investing certainly in a beautiful branding or website or now physical product, please go pay and do a real comprehensive trademark
You
search
can
with
have a
me.
name like Insta. I got in trouble for Insta. They're
Yes.
like, you can use it, but you can't sell things under it.
Exactly. Yeah. Because if you're too close, and that's the thing, all it has to be is a likelihood of confusion. And you're like, well, how close? Well, it could actually be not, it doesn't have to be the exact name. And, people can play fast and loose with cute country cottages spelling or phonetics or hyphens or pluralities. But like even adding shop or the or clothing or other things on it doesn't necessarily mean that you're different enough, especially if the goods are really similar and it's a more unique name in its niche. And so that kind of analysis is why I filed on close to 300 trademarks. And so when I do a search, I know what I'm looking for.
Oh my gosh, 300?
It's going to be a problem, So yeah.
300.
I'm almost to 300. Yeah. I already have a fun photo shoot plan when I hit 300. So to celebrate it.
And I've seen that website. Okay.
Yeah. It's deceptively like it looks simple. And that's the thing is like, you can fill it out on your own and just pay your fee. But first of all, this filing time, so you're going to wait 9 months before you hear anything back. So in that 9 months, you get no new info. You have no idea whether you've wasted your money, whether you have any chance of getting your name right. And then there can be little things like, I can usually tell people very quick whether like you have a shot in heck of getting that name. I give them a green light, yellow light, red light. And if it's yellow light, then we do more digging, right? But I want people to know whether is this ground that you can build a house on, or are you like squatting on someone else's IP? And we need to retool. We need to rebrand and find a way to figure out a name that you can fall in love with and you can feel confident that you can move forward with. So that's a big thing in terms of protecting creators. And then I would say the other piece is you got to watch your contracts, because that's where you're going to give rights away that you are maybe not going to be adequately compensated for. So anytime we have an agreement, a brand deal and contract that lands in your inbox, we got to be paying attention to name, image, and likeness, and whether you're giving, away something that sounds like an exclusive release or perpetual. These are not good words for you. Okay. You can have some exclusivity.
It's definitely not my favorite word.
Yeah. And that's something like there are brands that will ask for some exclusivity in contracts, and that could be something you negotiate for, but you should be getting paid for that, and you should narrow that. Don't let someone pigeonhole you and say, this is going to be exclusive. You can't, do any other beverage companies or any other big box stores like for 6 months. Like, are you kidding me? Narrow it down, cross that out and say, I won't talk about an iced tea brand for maybe a month or 3 months, especially depending on your niche. If you're a travel blogger, make sure that you're not locking yourself out from all this other work. What is the opportunity cost of other deals that you may be turning away? Make sure you're negotiating for that in your contract. And then the big thing now, of course, is like media licensing and usage, right? And you want to really make sure that you're reading through, and it can be tricky because there's different ways to word that, right? And there's different vocabulary. And so if you don't have access to an attorney or someone to help you redline that, normally you're going to be looking for words that deal with intellectual property, copyright, licensing, and then what's the use of the format and what can they do with it? Can they use it on social? Can they boost it and put advertising money for it? Can it be organic traffic or paid traffic? Can they put it in print? Can it go to web 3.0? Like, things are changing all the time, but you want to make sure if a brand likes that and the content deliverables perform really well, great, but make sure that you are getting paid for every 30 days usage of that. Don't just give that away like that's part of the deal, because that is really a separate piece of your business that you're offering. You are a content creator and you are a content licensor. You are licensing that content and allowing them to use that just like they would pay anyone else for the right to use, copyrighted material.
Yes, absolutely. And we see that in our contracts all the time. I just had a brand try to do, not discussed in the negotiation part, but when the contract was sent over, it had 12 months of exclusivity in there. And I sent over a quote for $72,000 because that was the rate, 30% of the budget each month. And they were like,
Right.
oh, we can take that out. And I'm like, okay, it's
Okay.
fine. I'll give it to you, but you're going to have to pay.
Right. And and to be fair on the other side, because sometimes I've negotiated ones for the agency or the brand side, sometimes they're using an old contract.
Yeah.
Sometimes they've been passed down a dinosaur and a copy of a copy of a contract, and they're not sure what's in it. Or they've been told from legal that they're not allowed to negotiate in red line, which, by the way, that's usually not the case. Like, this is not set in stone. It did not come down the mountain with Moses from Mount Sinai. Like, it's just a PDF. Okay, it's not sacred. And so, don't let someone bully you into like, oh, we really need this signed today, and legal doesn't allow us to redline. And like,
this is a very new career. Like, these contracts haven't been around forever because I've been in this business for 11 years and it has been literally invented as we go on. And more things keep being added. Like, people are like, send me your raw footage now. And I'm like, wait a second, that wasn't a thing last year, know?
Yeah.
So you can chop it up and make all the ads. So yes, exactly what Brittany's saying. Make sure you read your contracts and ask for legal help and check each line, red line what you aren't getting.
Right. Just never feel, overall, just never feel pressured not to advocate for yourself, because you are your best advocate. It's your right to understand and to have a good deal that's fair for both of you. And so if you start to get pressure from the other side that this needs to be signed right away, that like there's no room, if they're playing hardball and won't send you like an editable copy and are only sending it to you in the DocuSign portal, whatever, just don't take that, because honestly, like, they're not going to walk. Like, the deal will be fine.
Yes.
And you have the power and should be able to advocate and negotiate for yourself. And that's very normal in this industry.
Yeah.
So
nothing wrong with that. And I know we talked about a couple of examples already, but are there any other situations that you can think of where legal agreements or contracts were crucial in protecting the rights and interests of influencers?
Yeah, I mean, besides, those terms we talked about in terms of exclusivity, and then media usage, the other thing I would say for sure to watch out for is payment terms. I don't like pay net 90. Sometimes, like, there's celebrity marriages that have lasted less time than net 90. Right? So, if you can try to push back on that, and I know like they'll be like, oh, we can't, it's the accounting department. And I'm like, look, I know you guys have the money. That's just ridiculous. And that's what it does. It just takes the more that we ask and that we let them know, like, as influencers, we're not okay with this. Like, the industry will change and they'll do better, and they'll
normalize getting paid when you do the work.
Exactly. Yeah. And getting paid, faster, or even having like payment milestones. I mean, that's how, if someone's a freelancer or a web designer, if Netflix hires someone to do a bunch of animation,
totally normal.
They don't just invoice them at the end of the project for $80,000. That is not how it works. Like, no, they're meant to have payment milestones. So like, except that there's a process for that. And so it's not crazy to think that you shouldn't, have part of that. Sometimes in those contracts as well, you'll get weird asks like big insurance policies or like commercial insurance, or I've even seen like driver's policy insurance where I'm like, we're doing a deliverable about Lego. Like, that was for one of my clients. And so I'm like, they're not even in a car. Like, so, I X'd all that because I'm like, no, I am not like getting a special liability policy for this one thing. And that's just, again, old contract corporate stuff, boilerplate that no one is just asking, critically, do we actually need to have this? Is this important to have in there? So, watch out for that. I have had some clients run into stuff with like the approval process in terms of being clear of the timeline. So
Yes, that's so
especially
important.
if this is a deal where like you are working with agency and agency is working with brand, make sure it's clear that like, if you know, it's pretty normal now, right, that they want you to send it over and then they have to approve it before you post.
Yeah, that's
If
standard
that's
now.
the case,
Yeah.
make sure that like you have some timeline in there of like, you have to give me feedback by this date, or if I don't hear feedback within 5 days or 10 business days, I'm assuming that it's approved. Because if not, if they drag their feet, not only will they probably blame it on you, but then you might miss your editorial, calendar. And now you're like, well, now I'm slammed into another campaign and I'm going back to back. And this is not how I like to show up to my audience. And I'm going to be in a different spot. And that's going to be weird to be talking about my insurance spot, when I'm supposed to be talking about this. And so that's something else that I've negotiated before is like, hey, approval rights, this is how we're just going to add that in. And so
Absolutely.
those are like the biggie, yeah.
An out clause also, because I've had a brand that just ghosted on approval, but because there was terms in the contract, they still had to pay me $11,000, and I never shared the content ever. But if that wasn't in there, I'm pretty sure they would say, okay, well, we didn't use it, we don't have to pay you.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure, check for termination is usually where you're going to see either termination or cancellation clause about like, if they decide to terminate or when they do, what's due to you, and that should reflect the investment, especially if maybe you say you haven't created the content yet, but you saved that spot on your calendar and you turned away other work. There's an opportunity cost to that. So it's really fair for you to ask to be compensated, to say, hey, you guys were flippant and changed your mind. That's fine. But this was the kill clause here. So that's something else you should keep in mind. So
that's really good.
Yeah, the opportunity cost, that's real. Like this is your scarce resource that you have to sell is your calendar and your spots. And so, just like a magazine, like they held that ad page, and then if someone decided to back out, well, now they have to fill it and it's last minute and it's rush, so there's a cost to that. So
I love that. And if you ever get confused, I do love your analogy of the ad page, because I came from advertising, yellow pages and digital media, and you can always put your advertising hat on, like what would they do in radio or TV or print, because essentially that's what we're selling, those ad spots. So
you really are. Every influencer is like a digital magazine, really. And so you are perfecting the blend of editorial versus advertising content, and what is it going to look like, and what, your themes, and how are you going to sell to your audience. And so it's a totally appropriate for you to understand that mix of that and what that looks like, and for you to have good boundaries with those partners and vendors that are help service you as part of your release, right, and your publishing and distribution.
And I hope that Brittany's giving you some confidence in redlining the terms of payment, especially because that is so important, because I can't even imagine like a plumber or an electrician coming over and me being like, hey, I'll pay you in 90 days. See you later. That just
it would be like, see ya, or
right.
even having a late fee is something that I add in redline really commonly, is to have some sort of late fee, because say you do have net 30 or 60 or whatever. If that goes by and they haven't paid you yet, time is money, and it's a pain to have to track down people, right, for it. And so it's nice to have a late fee, because that just gets everybody honest and just gets those invoices paid on time, right? Yeah,
absolutely. I use QuickBooks, and they do have a late fee that you can establish in there, and it will send it out daily as a reminder to them. And I've had brands pay that. And even redlining payment terms, I just had a brand have net 90, and I was like, I can't do this, but it was such a large amount of money. You don't want to push back for fear that they will just go somewhere else. So I understand it from the influencer side, but also if you put your business hat on, just send them one more email and ask, hey, can we adjust this? And be nice and personable. And, you don't have to be, a bully about it on our end either. We can say, hey, what can we do here? And try to get
to make this work. Yeah. To make this to be a good deal for both sides. And I would say overall for negotiation, if you come back and you guys are still kind of in terms, negotiating terms, and it's not quite right, and they're saying, oh, that's too much for their budget, or we don't have the budget for that, which we always know, eye roll, do they really not have the budget for that? But instead of cutting your rates, cut off the deliverables, right? So, make sure that you're preserving your brand value and you're anchoring that pricing. And so, and it's like, oh, okay, I totally understand. Then let's cut down and only do one reel and 2 stories, slides, instead of this, and the YouTube integration and a TikTok video. So, be okay in advocating that. And that way you can kind of keep your perceived value where it needs to be, right, and anchor. Something else I will say that's come up with a lot of people, and I get a lot of questions, especially from my influencer clients and audience, is about using and being careful of other people's content and how to protect that. So I will say, be careful with like commercial music. This is one that's come up and become, and I know it's tricky because it seems like social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok are okay with you using any music, and that's fine. And they are and they aren't. They're in a really tricky place because the music industry does want them to use and promote songs, but they also don't want people to have free commercial use and not have to pay a license. And right now, technically, by using and being an Instagram user, you are saying that you are not using that music for commercial use. And so if you're doing something that's a sponsored content for a brand, I would be very careful and not use commercial, basically no fun music. And I know that's tough, right? But it also means that you're giving options, because sometimes if you use fun music, they'll come back and they'll be like, well, I need you to reshoot it because now they can't boost the ad, or they can't use it for something else because they're restricted. And so, you know, first of all, always shoot with nothing, no music, right? So if you needed to go back that, like, don't lock yourself into that. And then just be aware, because, you know, Bang just settled, they got sued for like $70 million, and they were all Bang energy drinks.
Oh my gosh.
By all the 3 major record label companies. So they got sued last year for basically using fun music and then telling their influencers, oh yeah, you should use this and use viral songs and it'll go great. And yeah, you know, they did went viral. And then the 3 record companies are like, you're using all of our fun music for free to sell your energy drinks, and we're not seeing a dime. It's not okay with us. And TikTok was like, we told them it's in our terms. Like they will not come to your aid at all. Like all they will do is point to their terms and conditions and say it's your fault. And so
what can influencers do to make sure that they're not going to infringe on those intellectual property rights?
Yeah, it's just to make sure that whatever you create, whatever you're going to turn over, needs to be yours. So if it should be your head, it should be your face, it should be, you know, music you created, or like nothing fun. And that's especially true. Like if you have someone else who's appearing in content with you that you can see their face, make sure you have a model release. Okay. So this is especially important if it's going to be sponsored content, because whoever you're turning it over, you are probably signing in your contract and promising that you have the rights to it. And so
you're liable.
Yeah, so you're liable. So if that person gets mad and is like, I didn't know that I was going to be in a freaking commercial for something, they're going to go to the brand. The brand's going to look at you and be like, hey, you agreed in this contract. And so now you are responsible to pay the cost of the lawsuit from that person. That's what indemnification means. It means you're promising, and if this goes wrong, you will pay the legal burden to shoulder this lawsuit. And so those are obligations you need to take very seriously. So you need to understand what you are indemnifying. Is it stuff you could control? And are you actually following through on those promises, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with like product liability. That's one that I've seen crop up sometimes, is like, you should never be liable for product liability stuff. Like that's not your job. That's the brand, right? To take care of that. And then another one that I started adding to, I'm calling it the Balenciaga clause, basically, which is that I want to balance out the morals clause that you see in a contract. Because if the brand can walk because you do something embarrassing, you should have the same right. Yeah. So that way, if the brand does something and you immediately want to distance yourself and you do not want to be their brand ambassador,
a very like top of mind thing right now.
It's very top of mind thing, because everyone's a brand, and now everyone needs to be brand conscious and conscious of their PR and public opinion and how quickly that can move and turn, and people can make mistakes and get canceled. So yeah, so it's just one that I've been adding into my contracts. But yeah, it's something I should probably just put available, you know, and sell it in my shop.
Make it available, please. I need it now.
And add it in, because I just think I'm just asking it for it to be fair and both sides, right?
Both ways.
If we get to walk, you know, if you guys get to walk because we do something embarrassing, I want the same right for my clients, you know, that way we can just distance. You could delete content on or archive it, right? Like, you know, because sometimes brands will say, well, you have to keep this up for 90 days or for a year. Well, what if they've suddenly taken a turn in the media? You do not want that content up and associated with you, right? So
that's genius. I've never heard of that or thought of that before.
I think I made it up. I think I created it. So, yeah, but after that came up, I was like reviewing my next contract, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not comfortable having this be a one-sided burden for my clients.
It's not fair.
Yeah, it's not fair. So, and that's the thing in Hollywood. It's always like, oh, well, we can walk, you know, if you go full, you know, in fact, you know, go full Hollywood on us and make poor choices. Okay, two can play that game, you know.
Full Hollywood. I like that.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to influencers and personal brands who are just starting out and may not have the resources to hire a full-time attorney? Like, what are some
Right.
proactive steps that they can take to protect themselves legally?
First, go through and access all my free content. So this is a big
He
part
does
of
have
I
a
do what
lot.
I do.
There's a lot. Yeah.
So yeah, I have a blog, I have a YouTube channel now, and I have a podcast. So depending on how you like to ingest and learn, I've got something for you in my Instagram. So besides exhausting all of that, I will say, some quick wins are I really recommend that people set up their LLCs and they do it early and often because it's only going to get more of a pain the longer you wait. So make sure you do that. And then, yeah, like we talked about, make sure you're reading through your contracts and understanding what they are. If you get stuck and don't have legal options or someone to help you, try to Google stuff, try to use Chat GPT. It's okay. I wouldn't say like it's not replacing an attorney, but like at least let you know, hey, this is what this language or maybe clause means, or this is another way to word it, right? Or negotiate or redline things. And then, lastly, I will say, make sure that you just have that business CEO hat on and think about, if this is, starting out as an influencer business, and maybe that's your end goal is just to stay there. But maybe you also want to morph this into really a personal brand and have your own offers and maybe have your own merch or your own physical products or digital products or other offerings.
You took the
and
words out of
events.
my mouth. I want to ask you
Yeah.
about that.
And if
Yeah.
that's the case, then start treating it like a business empire because that's what you're building. And that means you do need to start investing and putting some assets and getting some support on the legal and accounting side of your business so that you can grow the way you want to. Because businesses that want to be able to offer those things and build like that, they need to have legal support. Okay. They need to have someone in their corner to help. And so that's just a normal part of growing up and your business baby growing up. And so, so be prepared for that and be like, that's awesome. I am growing up on my business that like, I'm in a new level. I need a new devil. And so now I need some legal support. So
that is a big trend with influencers. Like once you hit a certain spot, working with brands is amazing. Don't get me wrong, but it's also really cool to be an entrepreneur and have, and create products and sell digital services like that.
Absolutely.
I mean, most everyone that is an influencer is also entrepreneur. So that's the general projection of where they're going. So they can talk to you to get, set up with those services.
I provide one-on-one legal services, and then I also have like a subscription, and so that's one for like people who are like really scaling businesses who want like ongoing support and want like I want someone to answer quick questions and to be able to like have some discounted services and just be able to budget for that every month. That's something that I offer for kind of scaling
subscription.
So,
why am I just now hearing about
I know. So yeah, I'll send you the deets. And so that's one that can help a lot of people who are like, okay, I'm just ready to have someone in my corner, right? That I can have like all the time. So So that's what I'm here for, is to kind of help along all those legal roadmaps, right? As you start to grow your business.
What types of legal agreements or contracts do you typically recommend to influencers to safeguard their work and collaborations? And if you have any examples or templates, of course, we all need that.
Yes, I'd be happy to walk you through. So yeah, the obvious one is just going to be like your brand agreement, right? Collaboration deal. And that's one that most people are familiar with. Outside of that, I will say operating agreements are kind of like your internal rules for running your business. Some states don't require them, but some states do. California, for example, requires that you have an operating agreement, and some banks require that you have one when you go and set up your business bank account.
Even if you're solo or just
even if you're a solo, right? It seems a little weird. And then certainly if you have a business partner, they are critical to have because it will force you to confront things and discuss things like equity, like profit sharing, like intellectual property ownership and exit planning. And although those conversations can be slightly awkward, it's really good to do those in the honeymoon phase of a business to try to stave off an ugly business divorce. So that's why I call operating agreements business prenups. And they're really, really important. And they're really important, like Kanye says, we want prenup. You got to take care of them if you have a business partnership, because it is like getting business married to somebody. And so you got to talk about what happens when life happens, when one of us wants to leave. And then the next thing I would say that I don't think I mentioned yet is getting your website legal documents. And so that's really
what
important.
I wanted to ask you. Yeah. About
is like all the stuff that you've seen in a footer, right? And you're like, am I supposed to have that?
What is that? Yes.
Yes, you are. So there are 6 states in the US that have state privacy laws now by the end of the year. And there's 5 more that just signed legislation that will probably be live by the end of next year. So all this is to say is that you need to have some notices on your website of what you collect and what you do with it. Every website Doesn't matter if you sell or not from the website, doesn't matter what platform it's on. Like I could just end all that Googling for you. You need a privacy policy. You need them.
Okay. Privacy
So
policy, check.
check. And then it's a really good idea to have terms and conditions or website terms or terms of use to terms of service. They're all called different things. We mean like terms, right?
Okay.
And these are kind of like your clubhouse rules. Like people are coming to your clubhouse, to your website.
Yeah.
What do you want the rules to be regarding intellectual property? What about like, do you allow any user generated content? Like this is really important. If you allow people to like upload things to your website, like this is a bigger deal when more people had forums and discussions.
Yes.
And like comments, like those are kind of going the wayside because now all we know is they're just like collecting spam bots, right? But it's still really good to have it. The most important thing to have in your terms, if you are selling from your site, is a refund policy and like a shipping policy. And I'll see on a lot of websites, like a lot of Shopify sites, you know, e-commerce, people will just have those and they'll be like, oh, I have terms and conditions. I have a refund policy, but it's not enough. There's more stuff that we should have there and be covered. And so I sell my website legal bundle, has everything you need in your footer. Okay. And it's just like my one-stop best-selling, you know, product that I have that makes it really easy. You like follow the paint by numbers and I tell you, here's exactly what you can include if you do this. If you don't do these things, you don't need this on your terms. Because I know people can like copy and paste and get free ones online, but some of them are okay and some of them are not good. Like in fact, some of them are straight up wrong, or they don't include the right terms that you need for what you're doing, you know, or they don't have language about like, hey, if you're in like a wellness influencer and talking about like health and wellness stuff, there's some disclaimers you should have that say like, I am not a doctor. I am not diagnosing or treating any illness or condition. Like, or I have affiliate links on here. You should disclose that. Or I'm talking about making money and having business opportunities. And there's some language that you should have about like results may vary. And I'm not guaranteeing that you're going to make a certain amount of money. You know, these are legal disclaimers that we're used to seeing, but we're like, oh yeah, that's the fine print. So I include all of that stuff so that you know what fine print you need to have on the footer of your website. So
is it the same bundle for if, like for me, I have a course, you know, and I use a third-party platform like Teachable. Other people that have products use Shopify, like you mentioned. Is it the same bundle for people like me that have courses?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like my website bundle is basically like generally drafted for any website on any platform. And then I do sell specific terms for an online course, for digital product. And then I have another one for like a group program, like some sort of subscription. And so a lot of people, if your platform allows it, then you can link to those on top of your general terms. It depends on the platform. Some platforms are allowing you to put in your own terms and conditions. Some don't. And like when you click checkout, it'll just check out to Teachable terms, right? So if that's the case, then like you take those online course terms and you just copy and paste and put them on your regular website. And that way, like it's still there and someone's still agreeing to it by purchase. And I think that tech will catch up. Like every time I talk to anyone who's in like online course SaaS, I'm like, hey, you need to allow people to put in their own terms. That's really important on the legal side. Like, because that's, if you get someone who does like a bogus chargeback or like a refund, that's the first thing your payment processor is going to ask for. They're going to say, well, what were the terms of this purchase? What's your refund policy? And I've had clients that were able to keep their money in their bank account and win a chargeback because they sent their terms and they're like, this is what the client signed. Like on this date, they agreed to these terms, right? And so
I'm just going to take some notes really quick. Okay.
Yeah. And so that's just a really important part, especially if you have a higher ticket course or it's one that might be, you know, just the way that it's positioned, people might get cold feet or might just attract a certain kind of person who wants to try to test your legal boundaries. Like, you know, I always say trust but verify. I like to think the best of people, but there are people out there who will test the boundaries of you and like what your business setup is. And so you always want to be in a position where you can be kind and gracious if you want to, but not forced into being that position because you didn't have protections in place.
Just like in a partnership, when you have an operating agreement, if it's all outlined in the beginning, there's really nowhere, you don't need to.
Yeah, there's no wiggle room. And again, you can be like, you know what, I'm not going to enforce this. And that's like, you're right. And you can do a legal one, but that's like a very different position being like, I have no options. And because we haven't anything in written. And the big thing about intellectual property is that the law says whoever created a thing owns the thing unless you have something in writing otherwise. And so unless there's a contract that has changed ownership and put that and spelled that out, it can get very messy on who owns something. And this is a lesson even for like for people who might have freelancers or virtual assistants or copywriters or social media managers, helping you. If they're creating cool stuff for your business, if they're creating content or editing or creating goodies for you, you need to make sure that you get the rights to those, because they are not, and if they're not an employee, you don't get the work for hire doctrine. That's not automatic. You have to have something in a contract that transfers the rights to that thing into your pocket. So then you can turn around and do what you need to. So that means independent contractors need an independent contractor agreement. So
yeah. And how do you feel about NDAs also when you have all those people on your team?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love NDAs. I sell, just like the independent contractor agreement, I sell NDAs in my shop. Also, my 1099, my independent contract agreement, has NDA language in it. And so I have that as a fail safe. So in case someone forgets to do an NDA, it's got enough robust confidentiality language that says hey, you're going to be able to see things behind the scenes. This is confidential business information. We don't share this with other people,
Right.
and it's a really important protection, because some people want to try to put a non-compete in with their assistants, or some people who have access to their business, and you really can't do that with an independent contractor. The whole thing is they have to be independent. They have to be able to offer their services to other people. You can't have it both ways. If you wanted them to only work for you, make them an employee. If you don't want to do that, then they need to be independent. And it means you can put limits on, you can probably put non-solicitation language in there, meaning they can't solicit your clients. And you can put NDA language or confidential language in there. But I would be very careful and be very hesitant to anyone who tells you, or any business coach or someone else who hands you a contract that has a non-compete, because it might not even be enforceable or legal. And in fact, it could be even worse, right? Because there can be some damages or harm, because they can use that, and then they can try to apply for, unemployment. And it's the labor board of your state that will come to you with a clipboard and be like, explain to me what this person is doing for you. How many hours are they working? Whose laptop are they using? Whose software? Whose computer? How are you paying them? Are they running a business? Are they invoicing you, or are you paying them by the hour? And if there's too many questions like that side on the employee, then you've been misclassifying them, and you owe back taxes, and you owe back benefits, and to the state and to the IRS. And so those are ugly business surprises for our business owners. So we want to try to avoid that. Keep your independent contractors independent. Yeah.
And I like what you said about the non-solicitation in the agreement, because I have been approached by my friend's assistants, and the only reason I know that they're my friend's assistants is because they were like, hey, I see you follow this person, I'm actually their assistant, and they list off all these people, and I'm like, I don't know if they want right. You know what I mean? If they haven't gotten a testimonial for you, I'm pretty sure they don't want to be used as one of the Joneses to
list as their street cred, Right. And so that's something that you want to talk about, is whether, you can publicly talk about their work and certainly be able to use that in terms of negotiating their next position. Right. So, so really you probably can't control, someone will likely be able to put on their LinkedIn that they work for you. You can't stop them from doing that. But in terms of using their name, especially if they're trying to use that, or I've had people, and this is something that I've written in some of our agreements for team members, of someone trying to approach a brand and been like, hey, I work for so-and-so, can I be made an affiliate, or I've got all the contacts and the email addresses. So you got to be very careful that people are recognize that the access that they have to all of that's confidential business information, and it's not appropriate for them to be turning around and then using that and leveraging that to build their own book of business.
If that didn't scare everybody that is listening to this right now, it should, because I'm terrified. I'm going to your website to make sure I have all of these agreements.
All of this, just we like boundaries, right? Boundaries are so hot right now, and so business boundaries are no different, and that's all that contracts are. They're just hey, we want to work together. Life is complicated. Let's just write it out. Let's just get it out on paper. Let's have a contract so we both know, and this can be a win-win, right?
Yes. And all of these rules. Obviously, you are a lawyer, so you're very smart, and I've enjoyed learning so much from you. But are there any emerging legal issues or trends that influencers should be aware of, and when the digital landscape changes? How can I stay up to date?
All this stuff, right? That's changing all the time. Yeah. I mean, that's the good and the bad of it, right? We're never going to get bored being in the creator economy. But it does mean that also we can't take too big of breaks, because then we feel oh no, chat GPT, what has happened? So I would say AI is a big thing, and a lot of my clients are asking about that. I'm using it myself in my legal practice. I'm playing around with using it to help me better review and redline and negotiate contracts, because it's helping me, you know, especially sorting through when I get agreements from Jelly Smack that are in like size 9 font. I'm like, awesome. I love that for us. Yeah. I'm like, like, let's try to use AI because it does a better job than my eyes do of finding stuff. I will say, you know, there's a couple online newsletters I love. Leah Haberman is a professor at UCLA, and she teaches about like influencers in the creator economy. And I've recently subscribed to her newsletter a couple months ago, and I'm even paying for the paid version, but it's an incredible resource.
When I was
Yeah.
in school.
Yeah, not a class, right? Not a class that I was in school either, right? But when I looked when I went to my career services offices, there were like practice areas, oil and gas, maritime law, you know, commercial real estate. And I was like, none of these sound like something I want to do.
No.
There was not, you know, influencers and online business owners and like coaching was not listed in the book. Yeah, Leah's newsletter, and I think it's ICYM is like the acronym for it. But if you look her up on LinkedIn, she has all the notes for it. And even just the free version is amazing because she'll do like a roundup of like this week in TikTok and on LinkedIn and on Instagram. And here are like the industry updates and here's what's going on. And it'll just kind of help you make sure that you understand bigger picture in the creator economy, what's happening and what's changing and who's talking about what. So, and then I would say events. I've had a lot of success and really enjoyed getting to go to events. And I'm so happy that those are now like coming back online and recovering after COVID. Right. And so, and then for me, I like listening on the go. And so like podcasts have been a great tool for me. So obviously I have a podcast. I'm
What is yours?
So yes. And so mine's called Creative Counsel.
Okay.
So if you like to listen to that, and then I have a YouTube channel too. But yeah, resources like that help you kind of dive into usually a specific subject, and then you can, you know, learn on the go and then decide, okay, are there other things that I want to learn? Yeah, that can kind of help you just navigate because yeah, you're right. Things change so quickly and you want to make sure that you're trying to be just smart and savvy, right? And like we said, like have that CEO, have that business owner hat on.
Yeah. And I love that. I've learned so much. And I think these are great resources. I'm going to put everything that Brittany's mentioned down below. I will link it. I will have all of her information. So
all the goodies. Yeah.
And we did get a question come in from our Instagram that I wanted to go. I'll just pull one. And it was a what to do in this kind of scenario, if you don't mind answering it.
Yeah, totally. I'm here for it.
So this happened. An influencer paid for their own vacation and they created all this amazing content. They posted it on their Instagram reels and regular post. And then came to find out that the brand had actually taken it and posted it, screen recorded stories, screen recorded the reels and posted it as their own, making sure to tag them because I'm sure they think that is following.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, because that's helpful. Thanks for the exposure.
Right.
Appreciate it. I'll make sure that I'll pay my mortgage with the exposure this month. They'll be very happy to get that.
So they have reached out to the brand and the brand said, we'd love to work with you in the future if we can keep these up.
How about you pay me for this and then we'll talk about working in the future? It's not an if then, because right now you're committing copyright infringement.
Okay.
They're committing copyright infringement. Your photos, your videos belong to you. And unless you have something in writing giving those rights to someone else, it doesn't matter if you tag them, the brand doesn't matter if you use their cute hashtags, like it does not matter. That content belongs to you. And there should be a licensing fee at the minimum that you should be paid to use that. And so I would say, yeah, don't start off that negotiating position saying that like, oh, maybe like they're going to dangle work for you if you play nice and roll over for this. At a minimum, they should be charging you for this, just like they had paid and booked you. And so I would have them pay full freight of whatever you would have charged for a campaign like that. And if they push back on that, then yeah, reach out to me and we can go. Then you can learn the power of what happens when you send that email again and you CC an attorney on it. And sometimes, honestly, that's all it takes is just to have my email address CC'd on something, and then magically the invoice gets paid, the licensing agreements get signed. You know, stuff happens that should have happened because you know you have value that you're contributing, and this is a service that you provide. And they're using this to promote their business as advertising, and they would have paid for this otherwise. So totally useful for you to ask for that. So yeah, and I will say for people, anytime you're ever tempted to like share something of someone else, a good question you want to ask yourself is like, if I didn't create it, I don't have permission to use it unless it's like an in-app sharing feature. So I'm talking about like in Instagram, paper airplane, going to stories. always going to be okay. All right. Because Instagram that's an in-app feature. They give you that right. What's not okay is to screenshot or screen record and then to put it on your posts, okay, or to move it in between another platform, to move it between TikTok and Instagram or TikTok, right? Or to put it on your website or to use it YouTube or something else. And so always just have that in the back of your mind. This comes up a lot, especially around like holidays, like International Women's Day. Bless those sweet illustrators and graphic designers who get ripped off by everyone, without, and people are like, well, I gave them credit,
I
I
know
tagged them.
exactly what you're
But
talking
guys,
about.
this is not school. You don't get out of it because you cited the source. Like, we're not in school anymore. You are a business. You are running a commercial enterprise, and you don't get to use someone else's copyrighted material without permission.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And that
So
looks
we're
like
creators. We have to do a good job to be stewards of the creator economy and to teach people that this is the right way to share and repurpose content. So
yeah. Right. Because it doesn't belong to them at the end of the day.
doesn't belong to you. It might look really cute. It might be your brand colors. Awesome. Just send them a DM. A lot of people are fine with you sharing stuff, but you got to ask them first. Yeah. So yeah.
And let me just tell you that CCing Brittany on an email is the ultimate flex. Okay. Who wouldn't want to do that? If somebody is giving you trouble, you know who to reach out to.
Yeah, you know who to reach out. I mean, I had a client this week. They're doing a deal with Nordstrom's, and it's been like this wholesale mess because Nordstrom, like, there was something issue with the inventory, and they've just been like giving them like the runaround, and it's been weeks and weeks. And they CC'd me on an email yesterday, and we got a response today from it. And I'm just like, I wish I could say that, like, that everyone could just have that power, but like there's just something about getting people to take things seriously. So yeah, talk to me if someone's not taking, not listening to you, and you need some help and support, because yeah, I don't like to see creators and amazing, female business owners being taken advantage of and pushed around by people. So
yeah, absolutely, because they know you mean business and they know that you're educated now. You have the tools, essentially. I love
to
that.
be legally legit.
To be legally legit. That is the perfect ending to this amazing conversation. Thank you so much for being here. I've been taking notes. I've learned so much already. Not like I can't just watch this back, but I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna write this down. So definitely reach out to Brittany. I will link all of her amazing resources here. And thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.